my name is Phillkyu Hwang, as introduced. I belong to this organization called GongGam, Human Rights Law Foundation in South Korea. And GongGam means empathy in English. And I worked with this organization for 20 years. It's non-profit, full-time, public interest lawyers group in South Korea. And we do a lot of human rights work. I mean, only human rights work. And for me, my main area of practice migrants and refugees, business and human rights, and disaster and human rights, and UN mechanisms and UN advocacy and international human rights law. And we do litigation, but at the same time we do a lot of work on legal reform, advocacy, and we do a lot of training research. And unlike other lawyers groups in other Asian countries, we maintain ourselves by grassroots fundraising, which means we have 2,000, 3,000 individual donors, local donors, who donate $10, $20 a month. So that's 70% of our budget, and the other 20 or 30% comes from some law firms and some corporations. And so we've been working for 20 years, and we were lucky to have the first board chair was the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission, and the second board chair was a former Supreme Court justice, and now we have board chair former Constitutional Court justice. And yeah, that's about my organization. And actually, this organization was one of its, first of its kind in Korea. When we started, there wasn't similar organizations, but now we have a number of similar organizations. And so, we have this full-time public interest lawyers groups, SNS group, and we have 160 lawyers working full-time, non-profit. Before I begin, I try to emphasize, please jump in any time, especially when I say something incorrect. Please, correct me, especially Professor. Okay, today I just going to talk a bit about strategic litigation or the advocacy work I have been doing, and then I really want to talk with you and hear what you have to say. So I just start with a case. Maybe some of you may heard of this case, but most of you, I don't think you heard of this case. This case about humidifier, disinfectants. Have you ever encountered this product? You know humidifier, right? But what about disinfectants for humidifiers? Have you ever seen these products? Yeah. Because these products were only produced in Korea. But the problem was, there was toxic elements within these disinfectants. And they were advertising, if you want your children healthy, you have to use these disinfectants. And it's been sold for almost 10 years. And thousands of people died because of these toxic elements. And much more people actually got hurt by these products. And they started sell this product in 1994, and they found out there are some toxic elements within it in 2011. So it's been more than 15 years. And we think that millions of people actually use this product. But at last time in 2011, we found out that there were toxic elements, and so there was all kinds of lawsuits and advocacy work and media coverage. So things like this happen. As a lawyers, what would you do? Sorry? What would you do? So you can think of litigation, right? I mean, criminal or civil litigation. So we can think of, as a lawyer, civil litigation and criminal litigation. Is there any other advocacy work you can do besides civil or criminal litigation? Sorry? Protest, movement. Yeah, it's always, movement matters. And what else? You have National Human Rights Commission, right? And you can submit complaint. Okay. And what else? Is there any kind of other? If they advertise, as I said, they advertise that it's totally safe and it's good for your children. If you want your children healthy, you should use these products. Is there any way to raise the issue against this kind of advertisement in Nepal? No? There must be some way. Okay. So, yeah, obviously, this litigation, there can be a litigation, criminal and civil, and complaints to the. So, in Korea, if this kind of advertisement is a problem, we can file a case again. Towards the Fair Trade Commission, because it's a kind of fake news. It's a kind of. They're lying, and it's a fake advertisement, so we can file, there's a process or institution that we can utilize. And also, yeah, there are some kind of national audit, other kind of ombudsman system. Usually they find their own cases, but if there is a certain procedure. If we get a certain number of signatures, we can, request investigation from this body. That's another way. In Korea, we actually tried National Human Rights Commission, and yeah, we tried to actually enact a new law to form a special investigation commission, and that was also successful. Yes, and other campaigns and protests and movements. And I've heard that many of you studied international human rights law, right? Am I correct? Yes. Okay. From international human rights law's perspective, what can be done besides this kind of work? Okay. And if, yeah, okay, oh, good, okay.
It's also hard, but I think besides this, I think we can file a complaint against the company being an artificial person, and we can file for compensation.
You mean the tort claim to companies?
Yes, for corporate law.
Yeah.
They can be held liable for their fake advertising and the distribution of products that were not allegedly completely in alignment with their advertising. And then we can also claim for criminal charges, like by removing the corporate name.
Yeah. I think she mentioned very important kind of issue, this corporate veil, because this company, the main company was in the UK, and this company in Korea was kind of affiliate of this the mother company in the UK. So there was a discussion actually of filing a case in the UK. So because there are so many actors involved, some actors, they were in Korean company when something happened, but they moved to other countries. And if this is a criminal case, there is an issue of extradition. Have you? Yeah, okay. So many people, it's okay. So there is an issue of extradition. And so there was one guy in Singapore and one guy in India. We tried, we kind of put pressure to the public prosecutor's office that they should study about extradition and they should do something about it, but they are not well aware of that kind of process, and they are not really keen on going on with these extradition procedures, and so we had a problem. And as I mentioned, there was strong kind of request to file this case in the UK. So actually I happened to be in the UK sometimes, so I met some lawyers, and we invited some UK lawyers to Korea to explore the possibility of filing a case in the UK, but finally we decided not to, but that was a very kind of meaningful process, because I mean, what are the advantages and disadvantages we could kind of evaluate through this process. And there is some kind of corruption involved. And maybe most of you don't know about this the procedures, but corruption, when there is a corruption issue, at least the UK and US has some kind of extraterritorial jurisdiction or universal jurisdiction, and they have special law. So, for example, I'm a company person of an affiliate company of the UK mother company, and I bribe a civil servant in Korea, then you can file this case in the UK for this corruption issue. So we actually filed they say that the law is Anti-Bribery Act, and the institution that handles this case is Serious Fraud Office, and we filed this case. But they are very selective, and on their website they say, well, once you file a case, we thoroughly review the case, but we are very selective. So within a week, if you don't get any reply, there won't be any reply. So I waited for 1 week, and there wasn't any reply. So that wasn't that successful. But I mean, there is this process. So if you encounter, in the future, any corruption, involving these, multinational corporations, whatever, you can think of these procedures and these mechanisms. And also, of course, you can use these UN mechanisms. I mean, you can submit the complaints to special rapporteurs or working groups, or if you have done some local kind of litigation, you can also go to the UN treaty bodies. And so, I mean, you can use these all kind of UN mechanisms. And also, I mean, there is this issue of this company, you can also think of this shareholder advocacy activism, or dealing with these investors. And usually, very often, these big companies, one of their shareholder investors, the pension funds from Netherlands or Norway, and they are kind of very serious. I mean, about this, the due diligence, human rights issues, and environmental issues. So we found out that the UK firms, one of the shareholders was the Norwegian pension fund, and they have certain system. The Council of Ethics, they receive complaints, and they review the case, and they make recommendation to the board of directors, and usually the board of directors kind of reflect, just accept that recommendation, and there have been a number of withdrawal of investment cases within the pension fund. So we filed the case, but again, it wasn't that successful. But the problem was, I mean, you never heard of this, humidifier disinfectants. It's not. I mean, it's not realistic, right? I mean, it sounds, So they couldn't understand. I mean, maybe some people, doing some, exaggerating things, that there was a kind of feedback we got from these people. So, even when just one case or one incident happened, there are a number of ways we can kind of tackle the issue or the case. And when I tell you all this, you will think, who knows about this, but now you know all this, right? And you can use any of these in the future if you encounter a case and you are an advocate to help or protect victims of this kind of cases. I mean, anywhere, Nepal, Korea, we have abundant resources of the cases, public interest law cases, but I can just introduce some of the cases I've done briefly, and we will talk together. The first case was just disclosure of information. It was an internal guideline about refugee status determination. And for that case, I mean, they simply didn't disclose this guideline. So, I mean, they decide the refugee status, but we don't know their kind of criteria. So it was a nonsense. So we filed a case, and through this process, I'm not sure whether you in Nepal, when do litigation, use some international organizations to submit some information, but in that case, the most crucial kind of approach we've done was having the UNHCR to submit an information about the status of transparency in relation to the internal guidelines on refugee status determination. And at that time, we found out that almost every country in the world, they disclose, I mean, the internal guidelines are public, except for Japan and Korea. And so, I mean, we were able to make a very strong argument against the government, and yeah, it went all the way to the Supreme Court, but we won the case. The second issue was, another refugee status determination. It was like 20 years ago, because when I first started my work, my first case was on refugees. My first litigation was on refugees, and at that time, there wasn't not a single winning case for refugee status determination. And I was the first winning lawyer for a refugee case, because, I mean, at that time, there was no lawyer. Not, because I was competent. I was the only lawyer who was representing, so I was the first one. And so when I first started my work on refugees, I gathered all the documents related to refugees in Korean language. And it took less than 1 day to read all the materials. So within 1 day, I became the expert of refugees in South Korea. It was a real blue ocean, right? I mean, so since then I pretend to be an expert. Yeah. But anyway, I had this case, refugee status determination for Myanmar asylum seekers, not these days, but 20 years ago, based on political opinion. And first case was there was, some asylum seekers, they have to maintain their livelihood, but when there were times when their application is rejected, there is no way to maintain, their livelihood, because there is no, there is no permission to work, or there is no subsidy from the government. So they have to work, to live. And there was a case when one of the asylum seekers got caught while working, and we filed a case against that deportation order. And fourth case was well, I mostly talk about this case. Migrant workers, undocumented migrant workers' right to labor union. The issue was so 15 years ago, migrant workers, they kind of organized themselves, form a union, and apply for, they went to this employment labor office to register their labor union, but the authorities, they rejected this application because some of the members of this labor union are undocumented. So there was this case, and just two more cases. One is, so when you are detained in another country, you have the right to actually contact consulate, and it's kind of protected by protected by the international treaties. But there was this one person who thought that his right to to contact this consulate was violated, so we filed a case, a state compensation case. Another compensation case was, well, there was this one English teacher, foreign English teacher in Korea, who had a kind of a record of past crime on kind of child abuse. And when the authorities found out, they made the internal guideline saying that all foreign language teachers will be subject to HIV AIDS test. Only foreign language teachers. So Korean foreign language teachers, they are okay. And foreign Korean language teachers, they are okay. But only foreign language teachers were subject to HIV AIDS test. It sounds nonsense, but it's been up for years. So actually, for this case, we filed this case to the UN Committee on Racial Discrimination, UN Human Rights Committee, and of course, we got all these positive decisions from these international bodies. So, yeah.
Just to say quickly, because I'm doing PhD and from India, and they asked me one of the eligibility criteria was HIV AIDS test. And I said, is it necessary? It has been actually outlawed in human right committee also. They said that this is a criteria. If you want to pursue PhD here, you have to. And I did it, and when I was collecting my report, I had a fear that what it is. But anyway, it appeared negative. So this is the criteria. So I will sue them after completion of my PhD. Just to, it is actually happening, and she knows, Dr. Amrita knows that, and she is laughing, and that's why I shared it. Yeah.
Okay, so you can contact me if you need any information. And I mentioned about this humidifier disinfectants. There was a certain case where there are victims. You can think of all these different tools, tactics, venue, fora, to actually solve the issue. But if you want to have a law which kind of deals with a lot of issues, in that situation, you can also kind of look for very different ways or different tools, different approaches. That's what we did with this Refugee Act. We have been working for almost 10 years to have this new law on refugees enacted, and that was actually the first refugee law in Asia. And so we did a lot of field investigation. At that time, we interviewed almost all asylum seekers, and we kind of tried to get the National Assembly involved, National Human Rights get involved, and even we got this bar association, Seoul Bar Association, Korean Bar Association, submit this new kind of draft law as their kind of official position. And at the same time, we did a lot of litigation, to strengthen and broaden our arguments. And also we use these different UN bodies and all these different international organizations and NGOs. They helped us to kind of submit some expert opinions to certain bodies. And I've heard that in Nepal also you can use a lot of international human rights law arguments in human rights cases. And that's what we did with this, especially the case with this undocumented migrants' right to labor union. In that case, the district court said undocumented migrant workers, they don't have the right to work. But labor union is an organization to promote, to kind of make better labor conditions in the future. How come those who don't have right to work can work for the improvement of labor conditions in the future? So that was the kind of logic of this court decision. Do you agree? There's some nodding. So undocumented migrants, those who don't have work permit, because they don't have work permit, they cannot talk about improvement of their labor conditions in the future. That was the first decision by the district court, and then we got involved, and we tried to compile as much as possible all these different international standards and comparative legal research results. And we found out that at least all these treaty bodies and their official kind of interpretation of these treaties, general comments, talk about this issue in general terms. So we compiled that, and sometimes it's not binding, but sometimes this kind of convincing arguments from the European Court of Human Rights or Inter-American Court of Human Rights, their kind of materials are sometimes useful. And for that case, actually, we found out that there is a comprehensive advisory opinion of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, hundreds of pages, all different philosophies inside, and all these different positions from different countries inside the report. And also we used some materials from Council of Europe, and we also did some comparative research, and we found out that there is some US Supreme Court decision that we can use, and also there is a Spanish Constitutional Court judgment on the same issue. So we compiled all this and bombard the court with all these documents. And also at the same time, what we did was using all these different UN mechanisms. I mean, there was an official visit by UN Special Rapporteur on migrants' rights. So we raised this issue towards this Special Rapporteur, so for our issue to be included in his official report. And during the state report review process of different treaty bodies, we also raised the issue. So for example, they sometimes some treaty bodies specifically mentioned about this case, and saying that the government should respect the appeal court decision, things like this. And also we find this case to the ILO, International Labour Organization. So we did all this, so the appeal court changed the decision. It said, well, if you are undocumented, you can be subject to deportation. And you are migrant workers. Migrant workers are also workers, and all workers have workers' rights. So migrant workers, undocumented migrants workers, they also have right to work. I mean, right to labor union. So this is two totally different story. That was the decision by appeal court. But they never mentioned anything about international human rights law or UN mechanisms. So, but I subjectively insist that my international arguments had great impact on that decision. And also, I mean, sometimes it's very important, mapping different actors, different institutions, whether they are allies or whether they are enemies or whether they are potential allies. So when we do our work, we try to map all different actors and institutions that we can approach or we can work with or we can work against or we can neutralize whatever. Just simply briefly introduce some cases. I've been working for 20 years as a human rights lawyer, and I happen to be a Korean, I happen to be a man, and I happen to be a lawyer. So, I mean, it's all kind of by coincidence, right? I mean, but what will you do in the future is up to you, right? So, and things change. I have these two pictures. The one, both are with microphone. The one on right side is a student activist. Just 30 years ago, just been more than half a century, just 30 years ago, a student activist in front of the headquarters building of the Seoul National University tried to kind of support the first formation of the Confederation of Labor Unions in Korea. At that time, Confederation of Labor Unions was illegal. So they had this movement. And at the time, even though I was there and having microphone, I didn't have any power. I was just shouting, But after 30 years, there is this protest in front of Bar Association some years ago. I don't know whether you remember this kind of news. There was the impeachment of the president. And at that time, I was kind of convener of lawyers to have a protest for the impeachment of the president. And actually we had like 3,000, 5,000 lawyers kind of signed up for the petition or our protest. So as a lawyer, I have more power. And I know this power can be very dangerous, but if you can use this power properly and appropriately, I think you can change the society at least a bit. So you are almost all of you, right? I mean, will become lawyers who will have power, and always be aware of the danger of your power, but at the same time, try to use it very wisely and very effectively, and to some cause. But don't forget to have this courage and humor and passion. My colleagues, thank you. Any question, any comments, any corrections?
I can see they are surprised that when you mentioned 30 years ago.
Just 30 years.
Okay, questions on what he has presented, and questions on what you actually want to hear from Dr. Phillkyu, some other issues, because he has already mentioned his areas of interest. Okay, questions please. I have already said that KSL students are very smart. Okay, please raise your hand and then ask questions, please.
Just one thing is about the National Human Rights Commissions and South Korean Human Rights Commission, they both have a MOU to protect migrant workers who is working in who was working in South Korea. They both have a MOU agreement between the protection of the Nepalese people who is working in the South Korea, but we don't have some of the Koreans who are working with the migrant working in Nepal. So we have more cases. But South Korean, they are starting to receive the complaint. The complaint receiving, but if they have some of the problems they are facing in working as a migrant workers in South Korea. So this kinds of negotiation and agreement between the National Human Rights Commissions and South Korean Human Rights Commissions. So Nepal is also started with this kinds of agreement between the Qatar Human Rights Commission and Malaysian Human Rights Commission also. So National Human Rights Commission is also planning to all the countries where the people are working here as a migrant workers. So the relation between South Korean commissions and Nepalese commission is very cordial, and South Koreans are very many Nepalese who are facing some of the problems in South Korea due to they are working somehow like this. The South Korean commission is starting to receive the complaint and started to provide some of the assistance and assistance. So this is just for information for the our students and bringing the US.
And also, I mentioned about this migrant workers labor union, and one of the prominent leaders of this labor union was Nepalese.
It's me again. My name is Misha Rai, and I was actually curious about a case. It was, I think, in 2022 or 2021. I'm not sure, but I think that you're aware of that case. Following incident of October, like there was a mass accident, like when they stepped on each other. Does that fall under the movement?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So I wanted to know what will be of that case, like what has happened, any updates on that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there was this a big, almost 159 people died during this Halloween kind of day. There was a Halloween day actually, and there was so much crowd, and the police or any other authorities, they were not kind of prepared to actually kind of handle this kind of crowd, and yeah. So I mean, anywhere there can be some disasters and instances where people die, and one of my area actually is disaster and human rights, and I didn't plan to become a disaster lawyer, but there was this sinking of a ferry 8 years ago where students 250 students died and high school students died. At that time, I mean, disaster was not on my list of human rights, but I thought I should do something. So I applied for leave to my organization, and I just went there, the area, and it was like 1 week of stay there. It was literally all chaos, all distrust, and all anger. And I thought that there was not a leave, vacation. So I came back to my office. So my organization is really good organization because I applied for vacation for 1 weekend, but I thought after working there, I didn't think it was vacation, so I kind of changed. So it wasn't vacation. You kind of dispatched me to work there. And then I actually, after that, for 1 year, I lived with the victim families, even not going to my office. And since then, I got involved in a number of different disasters. And when that disaster happened last October, fortunately, I had a junior lawyer who got really involved. So I was just kind of giving her advice, not directly involved. And she's been doing a lot of work, and there is a coalition of different NGOs or lawyers, academics, activists working on that issue. and their victims very well organized. So what they have been doing is, first there was like a criminal kind of procedures going on against the police and the municipal government. So the criminal cases are still going on, and there was some official investigation by National Assembly, but the victim families were not satisfied. So they are also going on with this special act, special legislation to investigate this case. And I think many of the members of National Assembly are very cooperative. So I think that by the end of this year, they will come up with this new act on special investigation. But I mean, when this kind of thing happened, I think it can be an opportunity for those in power, because they can use this occasion to show that they really care people. But very often, if the victims protest, they just think that it's a risk to the government. So they just criticize and they just counterattack the victims. That's what is happening almost all the time when a big disaster happens, at least in Korea. I don't know about other countries. Okay?
I have two questions regarding South Korea. So the first question would be,
Can you be a little louder?
my first question would be about former president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in or something. Sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. About him trying to enact laws about anti-discrimination laws in South Korea, which was given support by the people of Korea, but he wasn't able to do so. But in the current time, the current president of South Korea, whose name I guess is Yoon Sung-yeol or something, he or she won on the basis of accusing females of having low birth rate in South Korea, as South Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world, 0.81 I guess, right? And he or she, I don't know who is the current president of South Korea, right? He won on the basis of like accusing anti-feminists. He asked for votes of male anti-feminists, and he won this presidential election in South Korea, right? So how does this make like South Korea in the future, long run? How does this make sense for South Korea to divide its own population based on politics and about global politics?
Yeah, I mean, to begin with, I have to admit that even though Koreans, I mean, they post about BTS, all these K-dramas, they are basically, I mean, the mainstream is basically very xenophobic and, and based on kind of, that many of them have this kind of racist approach. And for example, there was this happening in the UN in 2007 when the Committee on Racial Discrimination was reviewing the state report from Korea. The Korean civil servants, the officials were saying, Korea is a homogeneous society, so there is almost no mixed blood. So we are all pure blood, so there is almost no racial discrimination. We are pure blood, no mixed blood, so no racial discrimination. And the committee members were shocked by this comment. What did you say? And we are pure blood. So we use these kind of terms, without any, kind of hesitation. And I'm not sure about you, but the mixed blood is really racist expression, and I think that I only read that term just in one context, Harry Potter. So that was a kind of perception, I mean, or the language we are using. And concerning this Anti-Discrimination Act, I mean, it's been there on the table, I mean, for almost 20 or 30 years. And my organization, actually, some of my colleagues are very active, in advocating this legislation to be enacted, but every politician is so reluctant. Not just the conservative, but progressive. I mean, the former president was very reluctant, and their followers are very reluctant. I mean, saying that we have to maintain our power, so we should avoid, controversial issues. That was the argument, like everywhere. And concerning these feminism issues, I mean, yeah, there is an issue, and Korean conservatives are very against the feminism, or the word feminism and feminist approach, and so they decided to get rid of gender, Ministry of Gender. So yeah, we have a lot of issues, and I mean, I don't know about the Nepalese kind of history, but most countries in Asia, they have ups and downs, progress and regress. And for us, it's time for regress. And certainly, I mean, this new government is kind of restricting protests and all this. So, yeah. But time will come. I mean, there was, it was just 5 years ago, I mean, this impeachment. And suddenly, yeah, it's for time for, all retreat and regress. Okay.
Professor mentioned we've seen a large number of Nepalese migrant workers in Korea. He was talking about Nepali migrant labor union movement. I just wanted to know if there were any other cases where you dealt with migrant workers from Nepal, and also just to follow up on that, what do you think is currently some of the major problems that migrant workers are facing, either from Nepal or generally they're working in Korea?
Yeah, I mean, migrant workers are not particularly, I've handled Nepalese cases, but basically there are a number of issues. I mean, to begin with, the process of coming to Korea. I mean, the process has been improved a bit, but still there are a lot of issues. I mean, a lot of brokers involved, and a lot of kind of illegal duties are imposed on migrant workers. So there is this issue of the process of migration. And also there are issues about labor conditions. I mean, the housing conditions. Sometimes, I mean, they try to actually kind of charge you a lot of money for, really bad housing, things like this. And also, I mean, even though we won the case for the labor union, if migrant workers try to join labor union, there are some kind of retaliations in some companies. And also, the problem is actually the present government is trying to have more restrictions on migrants. So actually, yesterday they kind of announced a new policy to restricting a certain area that migrant workers can work. Before, if you move your the working places, you can go from Seoul to Busan, or But now, if your first working place is Busan, if you change your working place, you should be in Busan. So they are trying to change their policy, and of course, I mean, advocates, including myself, are strongly protesting against the kind of policy, because it's a kind of a heavy, I mean, violation of the freedom of movement, things like that. So we are now experiencing more and more restrictions from the government. So yeah. I want to say some bright side, but it's very difficult, yeah. Yes.
Migrant workers working in South Korea, I had not heard about it. This year, I found a lot of people who are learning Korean in Korea, and they're as young as 19 and 18. So I want to ask, you talked a lot about union, but then how does the union protect its members, especially people, and how does it work? How does the union help its members? Why should they be a part of it?
Wow. Good question. But to be honest, I mean, the migrant workers union doesn't have much power, but they are affiliated with this Confederation of Labor Union, which have some power. So as I mentioned, the restrictions the government is trying to impose, the Confederation will stand up, against this policy. And sometimes if this protest is powerfully off, there can be some compromise, things like that. But individual cases, I don't think that the Migrant Workers Union is really kind of capable of, to help all individual cases.
Any further question, one or two? Could you please again say something like you said, right side?
This period of regress, and I'm happy to be Korean, I'm happy to be a man. Things can change, and you can change things. The matter is how you prepare. For example, when I first became a lawyer, I didn't have any kind of connections, or it was time of regress, but I thought the Bar Association, because we have mandatory membership, every lawyer is a member of the Bar Association. If I can convince the Bar Association, the mainstream, maybe I can have some power. So I have been working with Bar Association as a coordinator of Human Rights Committee for 10 years. And then I can have some, a say within this Bar Association. And when there was this incident where the leadership in the Bar Association, they simply kind of come up with an opinion which supported the Anti-Terrorist Act prepared by the ruling party at the time. They didn't follow any rules, procedural rules, even within the Bar Association, but the Bar Association leadership, they simply submitted this opinion that they 100% in consent with support the anti-terrorist bill. And at that time, I kind of, again, convened some lawyers to raise the issue against this Bar Association leadership, because I have been working with these Bar Association lawyers and they have trust in me. So at that time we collected like 2,000, 3,000 signatures from lawyers, denouncing the Bar leadership's action in relation to this anti-terrorist bill. And that was the first time that the president of Korean Bar Association made a public apology to its members in Korean Bar Association history. And also, I mentioned about this impeachment because I have been working with all these different lawyers. Even though I just work on human rights, they understand what I'm doing, and at least the lawyers, they don't kind of have prejudice against me. So when this impeachment situation happened, both lawyers from conservative and progressive, they asked me to be the convener of lawyers to work on this impeachment. So, yeah, there are times that it's very difficult to win a case, and there are times where you not go forward, but try to prevent going backward. But if you are prepared and if you have people you can trust around you, or people who trust you, I think things will change and you can change things. And so courage, passion, and humor will make you change the world. Thank you.
Unless you have one or two questions.
My question relates with refugee right. So, the government of Nepal has failed to verify the condition of refugee. So, not verified. So, it has two consequences. On the one hand, it has failed to protect the right of refugee in general. And
Nepal government not ratified the refugee convention, but in almost is like a 30 plus years ago, the US government, UNHCR, Nepal, and Israeli government of Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama is the Tibetan government. So there is a wonderful MOU between the four stakeholders. So the Tibetan refugees, they can come to Nepal through Nepalese border, and they can stay only 15 days here. After that, they need to cross the border and go to India or any other country. So some kinds of MOU will happen. That's in addition to the Tibetan refugee countries. And Bhutan is more than 150,000 means were here in 1991. After that, the refugees remained only 6,000 here. The others, the refugees are the second and third country. They went in the outside of the country and went back to the refugee.
So, with that background,
And then ask the question.
Since Nepal has not ratified the Convention on Refugee, as I already mentioned, that it has two consequences. One, it has failed to protect the right of refugee in general, and on the other hand, it has failed to protect the right of Nepalese origin Lebanese refugee. So, in such a situation, how can we, as a law student or as a lawyer, solve such problem?
So I've been involved in this refugee rights network in Asia Pacific region for almost 15 years, and as I mentioned, I became the expert on refugees in Korea just in one day, and then I realized that I don't know nothing about refugees, and so I tried to find ways to learn about refugees. And I think almost, all of you are good at Googling, but my hobby is Googling, and I tried to find some program that I can attend. And at that time, there was an international conference organized by Canadian NGO on refugees, and they are saying, well, we're going to have this conference, but those who have real financial problems in underdeveloped countries, they will think about supporting. And I emailed them. Korea may not be an underdeveloped country, but human rights lawyers in Korea is really underdeveloped. And if you can help me to learn from you, I'm prepared to present a paper in any session, even though I don't know anything about refugees. And they invited me, and I went there. And that conference helped me to understand that what I don't know, or what I don't have. And I realized that other regions, Europe, Africa, America, they have their own networks. But I noticed some people from Asia, but they didn't have any network. So I asked the organizers, why don't you, why we don't have the network in Asia? And they are saying, well, other regions, they already have their network, so they are having meetings. So if you want a meeting of Asian countries, so you organize. So okay. So I put up banners and then, I don't know about your experience, but most of these international conferences, you go, and at the final moment, we are determined to continue 2-hour work together. And once you go once you arrive at the airport, you forgot everything. So that's what I did. But one participant from Asia, from Malaysia, she was really kind of serious, and she secured some funding from Australia, and she kind of proposed this network meeting of Asia Pacific. So now we have this Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network, APRON, which is a very strong network of all these different actors working on refugees. And in that network, we are really kind of serious about this refugee determination protection. And there are two kind of groups. One is those who ratified the Refugee Convention. The government decides this refugee status, and so we work together like Japan and Korea. But most countries in Asia, they didn't ratify the convention, and they tried to work with UNHCR. They tried to enact some kind of system within their country. So what I'm trying to say is collaboration and networking. And if you think you cannot do it yourself, I mean, you will need allies, you will need friends, and you will need experts or someone who actually knows better, who has more experiences. So I think I have never. I mean, I think I've seen some people from Nepal in that network meeting, but I don't think they were that active. So maybe in the future, I mean, you can, come to the meeting and be active, and first you kind of solve some issues in Nepal, but later you can contribute to problem solving in the region and sub-region. Thank you.
I think, do we take one more question?
Yeah.
First of all, I'm Manasur Bangladesh. So as you mentioned, BTS, Korea is right now a hub for K-pop bands, and nowadays the number of foreign band members are increasing. However, the time limits, the restrictions, making phone calls, going home, they even need to stay at Korea for almost 3 or 4 years without going back to their home country. Are they considered as foreign workers, or are they private contracts? What is it? Like, what are the influence factors? Are they considered foreign workers, or are these about band members, the foreign band members that are in K-pop? Yeah. So are these foreign members considered foreign workers, because you're foreign migrant workers, or are these private contracts?
Well, I'm not that familiar with that situation, but they must have some different visas, because most of migrant workers, they have this kind of unskilled labor visa, but they must have some kind of entertainment visa or something like that, so they must have different visas.